Shall we get started, or
Yeah,
wait,
everyone ready? All right, good to go. Turn it over to Christian.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your day to come to the Cherry Festival office and discuss the matters between the National Cherry Festival Air Show and the Airport Authority. Before we begin, I just wanted to introduce the team here in the room and then those that will be joining us on Zoom to offer a few remarks we will introduce at that time. For starters, my name is Christian Smith. That's Christian. Last name Smith, Smith. I am the director of the National Cherry Festival Air Show.
I'm Steve Tupper. Steve, spelled like it sounds, then Tupper, Tupper. I'm a lawyer helping the Cherry Festival, and I'm also an airline transport pilot certificate holder, as well as an FAA certificated air boss.
I am Kat Pay. I am the executive director and CEO of the Festival Foundation and the National Cherry Festival.
All right, thank you. There are the three of us here in the room that will be offering a few remarks today, and then there is also two joining us via Zoom that will be offering some remarks here over the next 30 minutes. So I would like to begin with a couple of statements from the director's position in the National Cherry Festival Air Show. I'd like to start by beginning and saying that the National Cherry Festival is unwilling to sign an egregious $100,000 user agreement for our rightful use to the national airspace system, of which the airport does not have the authority to control. This coordination is approved directly by the Federal Aviation Administration, and we will not cater to an agreement that is designed solely to profit off of our event. The most important thing for you all to take from today, I believe, is that the 2024 National Cherry Festival Air Show will go on as scheduled. The airport does not have the jurisdiction to delay it or cancel it. This air show operates under the highest safety standards, and it's designed to minimize impact to airline schedules. We have, in good faith, discussed with the airport to be good neighbors, but we are not able to sign the Northwest Regional Airport Authority's proposed agreement to charge us for our rightful use to the national airspace system. I would also like to start off by addressing a couple of key issues of safety. Over the last few months, the Airport Authority has brought up a couple of accusations against the air show that regard safety. I would like to state definitively that we have spoken on a number of occasions to the Federal Aviation Administration and that there are zero safety issues concerning the National Cherry Festival Air Show. I would also like to bring up a few points from the airport that they have asked our headline jet team, the United States Navy Blue Angels, to adjust their schedule for their key training day and safety checkpoint day, which is Thursday, June 27th. The Blue Angels and their team operate on a routine basis. They are creatures of habit, and it's what makes them such safe and precision aerial demonstrating pilots. The fact that the airport is asking them to fly at early hours of the morning, such as 8 a.m., would require some of their team to be up at 4 a.m. and at the air station preparing aircraft. And to me, that is more of a safety risk than anything that is impacting airline schedules at this point. I would also like to set for the record that any emergency that takes place during the air show, especially surrounding an air ambulance service, will take priority, as our waiver does state with the Federal Aviation Administration. We will always give them the priority at any time that issue presents itself. I'd like to also speak on the professionals that are here managing this show. I believe, and this is my personal opinion, that we have hired the best professionals in the air show industry to manage and put on the National Cherry Festival Air Show. We are very lucky and honored to have them working on our team, and we believe that they are going to do the greatest job that we all can to put on a safe and efficient air show for you. I believe that the comments made by the Airport Authority undermined our first responder planning, and as those professionals are largely a part of our air show committee planning team and the multiple meetings that we have throughout the year as we get ready for the air show. The National Cherry Festival has received the International Festival and Events Association Gold Planning, or the Gold Award for planning an ERP, or an emergency response plan, 7 years in a row. And that is something that I think that we owe a massive thank you to Greg Bird, our emergency management coordinator, and his team for their hard work in the planning process. This air show is a decades-long tradition that is a staple event of our community, and we are so grateful and honored for the support of the community to continue putting it on. It is an inspiration for the next generation of aviators. It was how I personally got involved in aviation. I saw this air show for my first time as a 1-year-old on the beach, and it's why I stand here before you today. I know that there are a number of other individuals that I have spoken with personally that got their start from this air show, and it would be an honor to continue having it here in our great community. That concludes my opening statements for our press conference today. I would like to turn it over to State of Michigan Representative John Roth for a message of support. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Down here in Lansing with you. Definitely supportive of the air show, and we got to make sure that continues. And any way I can help out, I will. There are some things that the airport's trying to do down here in Lansing that going to require some support. So I think there's a way to make sure that all are addressed and concerns are all addressed. Sorry. And definitely a huge supporter of the air show, and we will work with you guys to make sure this happens this year also and in the future.
Great. Thank you, Representative Roth. We appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. And I wish I could stay longer, but I have to run to caucus and actually the House session today. So
All right.
Good luck, guys, today at the airport board, and let us know what happens.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative. I would like to next take a moment to introduce virtually on our Zoom platform, John Cudahy. He is the CEO and president of the International Council of Air Shows, and he has prepared a statement from the ICAS organization.
Hi, my name, as Christian said, my name is John Cudahy. I've been with the International Council of Air Shows now for 27 years, and I will read a prepared statement. During the last 35 years, the staff and volunteers of the National Cherry Festival Air Show have built an air show in northern Michigan that is known as one of the elite air shows in all the world. Within Traverse City, the event has become part of how Traverse City defines itself, a community that, among many other things, hosts a world-class air show each summer. There are more than 200 shows held in the United States each year. The National Cherry Festival Air Show is unquestionably among the top 10% in how the show is planned and operated. But today, the future of the show is threatened by preconditions unilaterally imposed by representatives of the Northwest Regional Airport Authority. Stipulations that would handcuff the organizers of the air show from organizing and conducting the event as they understand it must be organized and conducted. Requirements that would inevitably lead to the end of the air show in Traverse City. There's not a single air show in all of North America that is planned and executed under the kind of policies proposed by the Airport Authority. Although the Airport Authority has raised a number of concerns related to the show, most of them focus on issues related to a supposed disruption of airline operations at Traverse City's Cherry Capital Airport during air show weekend. Despite the protestations, despite the protestations of the Airport Authority, there is nothing particularly unique about the small adjustments and schedule changes required during the air show weekend. They are commonplace at dozens of air shows throughout the United States, and we deal with them as an industry in a very matter-of-fact way. Resolution of airline scheduling issues in Traverse City and many other communities that host air shows do require close coordination and communications, but these small adjustments on just 4 days of the year, 1% of the calendar year, are routinely made by the airlines in consultation with air show management at many venues around the country. One member of the National Cherry Festival Air Show team has decades of experience making exactly these kinds of small scheduling adjustments at airports throughout the country. Indeed, because the actual air show is conducted over the waters of West Bay, the changes and adjustments needed for the Cherry Festival Air Show are actually much less complicated and fewer in number than the changes made at air shows conducted at commercial airports. The Cherry Festival Air Show is a community treasure that evolved and matured over multiple generations. As one of the largest spectator events in all of northern Michigan each year, it's a valuable source of entertainment, inspiration, and patriotism for hundreds of thousands of residents and visitors. It has an economic impact on Traverse City and the surrounding area that is measured in millions of dollars. Unfortunately, the decades of hard work and careful cultivation by the show's staff and hundreds of volunteers can be undone and destroyed almost overnight by those who do not understand the value of the show or how unlikely it is that the show could ever be resurrected if it is crippled by ill-considered, unnecessary, and heavy-handed requirements and stipulations. My organization, the International Council of Air Shows, urges the Northwest Regional Airport Authority and the people of Traverse City and its surrounding communities to recognize the devastating damage that will be done if the Airport Authority does not amend the requirements and restrictions it is placing on air show management. The future of the show is truly in jeopardy, and resolution of the current impasse requires the involvement of all those in the community who value the event and want to see it continue.
Thank you, John. We appreciate your time from the busy schedule today. John will remain on our Zoom for our question and answer period if we have any questions of the International Council of Air Shows. I would next like to introduce Steve Tupper to my left. Steve is an air show pilot, qualified air boss, and National Cherry Festival aviation attorney. Steve has a few prepared remarks and is also here to answer a few questions after Kat is finished speaking. Excuse me.
You bet. I'm delighted to be back in Traverse City. I grew up in Northern Michigan, and I wish I was not here and that things had proceeded apace as they have decades here in Traverse City for the air show. But I'm delighted to be back up here and able to talk to you on what I believe to be a very noble cause. The Airport Authority has proposed two forms of agreement. The second one worse than the first. We have bent over backwards to try to meet with an actual agreement that reflects the parties' rights and responsibilities as they actually are under applicable law, and particularly federal law. The air show provided to the Airport Authority a memorandum of understanding that actually reflects those rights, and it was rejected immediately. With the transmittal of each of the airport's versions of the agreement, we've been told that the airport will not accept any substantive changes. The good news, I hope, I had a conversation with the airport's lawyer yesterday, who is a collaborative professional, and I'm hoping that we can get to agreement. Some of the things that'll have to be in the agreement is the removal of the unilateral right of the airport to approve acts, to select the performers, to be able to, at the last minute, change things. Really, if you read the version of the agreement that we got from the Airport Authority, literally shut down the show in the middle of it for no reason that anybody is aware of, certainly not safety. That would have to be, the agreement also contains many declarations, especially in the recital section and elsewhere, that the parties' rights are other than what they really are under federal law, under the grant assurances that are associated with the $13 million received by the airport as a part of its airport improvement grant funding since 2019, not counting what the money that happened before that. And also the fees that are charged associated with it need to be in line with, similar use of the airport. We all like to use the term meet in the middle, and I'm a fan of that. And frankly, the MOU that we provided to the Airport Authority really was the middle. Nobody wants to spend a whole bunch of time taking a couple of agreements that are at extreme ends and fight your way back to the middle. I fear almost that I've erred in providing an agreement that effectively is the middle, does represent what the parties' actual rights are under federal law. After the conversation with the airport's lawyer, they have agreed to accept a red line, a modification of the version that the airport put together. I am hopeful that when we go back with that version of the agreement, that it is met with the understanding of the same spirit in which we've been working before. Let's do the agreement along the lines of what the parties' actual rights are under federal law, and let's preserve, as adults working together for the greater good of this community and for the benefit of 500,000 people who are, and this is beyond what the lawyer usually gets to say, these are heads in beds. They spend money, they buy things, and then they take them home, and then they come back. That's what I want for the place I spent my childhood. Sir.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. I would like to now introduce Kat Pay, Executive Director of the National Cherry Festival, for some closing remarks, and then we will open it up to questions and answers from the team of professionals that we have here at the press conference. Thank you, Kat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian. Our goal at the National Cherry Festival and, of course, the Festival Foundation has always been to provide a safe, world-class air show we support with our aviation partners, including air carriers that serve the airport, our colleagues at the International Council of Air Shows, as you just heard from John, and the Federal Aviation Administration. We are extremely thankful that the Blue Angels, the Thunderbirds, and many other military demonstration teams have chosen Traverse City to come to over the years, and we are extremely fortunate of that opportunity. We are also thankful and dedicated to the aerospace education opportunities that we do through our STEM programming at the Coast Guard Air Station during open ramp that happens, and all of the other opportunities that we're able to do through our scholarship program, through NMC Aviation, and through our pancake breakfast, and all of the other wonderful things that we're able to provide through these opportunities of having the air show. So with that.
Thank you. That will conclude our prepared remarks for the press conference. I'd like now to turn it back over to the folks in the room and some of those on the Zoom for questions and answers. Please know that John Cudahy from the International Council of Air Shows is also available for questions on our Zoom.
Peter Copes with the Record Eagle. Thank you for inviting me here today on this gorgeous Northern Michigan day. As you know, the leadership of the airport has been there for quite some time, not just Kevin Klein, but other people who have served on the authority board, which controls the airport. So it's not just one person, which I'm sure you're aware of. So I have two questions. One is, given the fact that those people have been there for quite some time, what changed? And number two, is it a good strategy to fight this out in the newspaper and airways instead of finding a resolution privately? Please answer those questions in order. What changed, and is it a good strategy to fight this out via press releases or press conferences rather than closed door negotiations? And that's not meant as an insult, it's meant as a question.
I can take that answer. Thank you, Peter. I think that there have been a couple of questions from our leadership team that reflect your first question, which is what has changed from the leadership of the airport. We are told that it is a growing airport, one of which is serviced by a number of air carriers. Then that would be airline scheduled service. As they indicate, that schedule will continue to grow. That has been the crux of the argument from the airport leadership, is that list has gotten too large for us to continue putting on the air show that we have over the past few years. When that point was brought to us way back in September and October of 2023, we immediately, and I say we, Kat Pay and I, went to the International Council of Air Shows annual meeting out in Las Vegas. At the convention, we hired 2 more additional professionals to return here to Traverse City. And now with a larger team of organized professionals here to help mitigate and deconflict the back and forth with the airport authority on their growing air carrier schedule. They have reassured us and have attempted to reassure the airport that issue is not enough to stop or curtail or ultimately shut down our air show. So to answer your question in a more consolidated form, we believe the argument from the airport is that the air carrier service has gotten too large, although I still have questions for motivation beyond that argument. Your second question, which was why are we now bringing this to the media and press releases? We have been diligently meeting with the airport authority and its leadership since October. We have attempted on multiple occasions to work this out amicably in the background at the airport authority's request. We have made a number of changes and what I will say are concessions to come to an agreement that works amicably for both of us. And at this point, we have just been met with one-sided demands, the last of which was an agreement that basically would be the death of our air show over the next 3 years. And I have to be clear about that. My team and the leadership team here at the National Cherry Festival is unable to sign such an agreement. And after many months, 5 to 6 months of trying to work this out quietly and peacefully behind closed doors, we felt it was important to now bring the community up to speed on what's happening. And we feel that it's important to fight for the National Cherry Festival Air Show. Thank you.
And just to follow up, so Kevin Klein told me personally last week that he encouraged you guys, and guys and gals, to resubmit a proposal. I don't think you have done that particular thing yet. Is that correct, that you haven't resubmitted a proposal?
Do you want to respond or do you want me to?
I kind of want to hear what you say.
I'm not sure in which proposal we're referring to. So there have been 3 versions of their agreement that has come over that we have not been able to sign off on. So we submitted a MOU back, a memorandum of understanding, as Mr. Tupper inclined. That was considered not something they were willing to move forward with. So we have not moved forward with anything since then. We were given a deadline on that last memorandum. So we sent over a memorandum of understanding. They sent their last agreement back with a deadline of 5 o'clock Thursday.
Yeah,
And I wrote a letter in response to that. Nothing has been submitted since then.
since then. Okay,
Correct.
Because I believe what your earlier one was about the 5th of March.
That sounds about right. Yes.
Okay.
March 2nd, Saturday, March 2nd. To be
Okay,
clear.
thank you.
Yes, sir. Ron, go ahead.
Thanks. So you said that there will be an air show today and previously, no matter what, but you said that you won't sign the agreement, or do you believe that you'll reach an agreement that you'll sign? Or can you defy and use the airport like you say you have the right to without their cooperation?
Yeah, good question, Ron. So at this point, we are unable to sign the agreement that they have put forward. We have put forward a version of an agreement, as Steve referred to, which we believe is middle of the road based on federal law. And my comments about the air show this year in 2024, the airport does not have the jurisdiction to delay or cancel our air show. They have no right to do so, and our team will be moving forward with the planning process. We encourage and welcome further conversation with the airport board to come to an amicable agreement. We are happy to do that, but we are unable to do it under the terms in which they have recently provided to our team.
How can you move forward if there's no agreement, if you get to that point with, say, a control tower and get permission to land and coordinate whatever has to be coordinated on the ground without the airport's cooperation?
I think, Ron, you're touching on a subject that I would really like to make clear today, which is these are incredibly complex matters. I will personally admit that I have learned a substantial amount about the air show industry and its operations since we began these discussions back in October. Our change after bringing this, and to expand on Peter's point, to bring this to the community and to the press was more of an indication of understanding what's happened so far and to this point. And as we move forward, we are looking to educate not just members of the Airport Authority Board, members of the community, members of the media, because there are multiple complex issues here that make it very challenging to boil it down to one clean statement of the Cherry Festival signs an agreement or we will not allow them to have an air show. It's far more complex than that. And our offer is to help everybody involved in the situation understand what those rights under the federal aviation regulations are. And I'll let Steve touch on those a bit further. Thank you.
You bet. This comes down to the way the law interacts. This is how I spent, every evening for 3.5 years, going to law school. And it's not easy. Christian's absolutely right. The airport, the Northwest Regional Airport Authority, owns the airport, the dirt, the buildings, the runways, the taxiways, etc. It does not own the airspace. The air we're breathing right now is part of the Class Delta airspace that is exclusively governed by the FAA. And it's a matter of, if you've ever heard of the term federal preemption, That's the kind of thing that, for instance, on the highways allows you the freedom to travel. You don't have to stop at the Ohio border and change the mud flaps on your tires. You don't have to stop at the California border in your car with Michigan plates and have an emissions test. This allows that freedom, so there's a uniform system. Whereas the airport authority owns the airport, the FAA owns the airspace. Important things are the air show does not take place at the airport. The only thing that takes place at the airport are taxiing, taking off, and landing. We don't ask other transient people to sign an agreement in order to do that. I personally landed at the airport this morning and taxied. This afternoon, I'm going to taxi again, and I'm going to take off. And I got a student who's doing it along cross country. That's the kind of thing that the FAA allows. One other element, and again, it's complex. As Kat and Christian will tell you, I'll talk about this for hours. When the airport took the federal money, it made a number of different grant assurances. Grant Assurance 22 in particular says that they have to make the airport available for every kind and type of aeronautical activity. That includes air shows, and they have to do it without unreasonable or unjust discrimination. Where we run into it is, I understand that the airport has grown the air carrier service, and nobody at this table is not a fan of that. We think it's great. It brings people in, it allows people here to get where they're going without having to go to Flint, without having to go to Detroit. Totally get that. But if you have taken the money with that condition on it, and with it built a thing that is no longer capable of satisfying that obligation to facilitate air shows, then the only thing I can say for sure is that that's not the Cherry Festival's problem to solve. The Cherry Festival, on the other hand, is totally willing to enter into a reasonable agreement that recognize the way things actually are under federal law. To echo Christian, it's wicked complicated. It's not the kind of thing that, unless you're somebody like me, that you'd actually regard as fun to go dig into. But the agreement to which we are trying to get, and that I remain hopeful that the airport authority and their council will agree on, will represent what the actual obligations and rights of the parties are under federal law. I hope I didn't drone too long,
No.
sir.
So just one last one. So if I hate to do the if thing, but the path you're going down now, you're this far without an agreement. No agreement, you claim you can still use the airport. It's complicated. You obviously have access. Is there any concern about legal matters, litigation or lawsuits to get a restraining order or stop or anything like that?
Always.
Okay.
And I'm just being, nobody wants that, least of all the people at this table. We want an air show, and an air show that collaborates with the airport authority and with everybody involved for the community. Everybody, I'm sure, and I talked to the airport authority's lawyer yesterday, spent about a half hour on the phone. Everybody has their backup plans. Nobody wants to go to plan B. Getting to agreement, a fair middle of the road agreement that answers the questions the way they actually are under applicable law, remains plan A.
I think it's important to also emphasize that as an air show director, I don't have a requirement to have an agreement with the airport, because we use it under normal operation as any other aircraft would, like Steve would this morning when he flew in here and departed. Now, I'd like to also recognize that we put up a temporary flight restriction, a TFR, for the protection and safety of all those flying around, and that does impact air carrier or airline scheduled service. That does for a total of 6.5 hours, 6.5 hours over the 4 days that the aircraft will be here in town. That is 0.25% of daylight hours in Traverse City. It is a very small effect, and the conversations that we've had with the air carrier network planners and dispatchers have shown to us that they are more than willing and able to work with us on pushing those flights small bits left and right. It is not to cancel flights. It is not to delay flights. Those flights still come and go as they are scheduled. They are just scheduled a bit outside of that sterile airspace requirement that the United States Navy Blue Angels use during their flight demonstration. We went to the public for transparency because otherwise the show would die, just to be clear.
So I want to make sure I understand something. I'm sort of exploring Ron's questions a little bit further, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You're saying that you don't have to have a signed agreement with the airport. You, under federal law, have the ability to run the show, period. So then is the only reason to pursue an agreement litigation? And I want to explore that comment further. You're saying the air show might die, but you're at the same time saying you've got the ability to do the air show even without signing an agreement. So I'm just trying to reconcile those two things.
Good clarification. I'm saying the air show will likely die if we sign the agreement that the airport has put forward.
Okay.
If we were to sign the last version of it, it curtails our air show and then outright pretty much cancels it as we know it, or like John Cudahy referenced from the International Council of Air Shows, puts such onerous restrictions on me and my team as event organizers that it would virtually be impossible to put on an air show in this town.
So why not at this point just say, forget it and take the risk of litigation?
We don't want to do that at this point.
Okay.
We would like to collaborate in a
get to
good
the-
faith
Sure.
manner and a good
Sure.
faith effort to be a good neighbor of the Northwest Regional Airport Authority.
Got it.
We recognize that we are neighbors in a very small town,
Sure.
and we both, I believe, have similar interests. We want to put on an air show and welcome the professionals that come here and fly. We want to get scheduled air service in and out of this airport as routinely as we can. I used it this week. I was very grateful to have flights out of this airport. And we want to put on a great air show for our community and visitors that come here for the National Cherry Festival. So to answer your question, Art, I do not believe that we have any interest in moving on without them. We are more than willing to continue discussions, but I will not and I cannot sign an agreement that gives them unilateral control over our air show and curtails it to its death in the next 3 years.
And what's this $100,000? Maybe I'm the only one in the room that hasn't heard about this, but what is that? And what are they trying to claim that that's for?
The airport is asking us to virtually cover the costs that they incur while our air show takes place over 4 days. We have presented a sponsorship package to the airport that exceeds the amount in which they requested from us. That is to offset the impact that we have on the airport. And in reality, as we move forward through the planning process, if we cannot come to an amicable solution with the airport, we will be taking over a lot of the work that they have done for us graciously in the past. We are very grateful for their assistance and we welcome them to continue doing that with us. But at the end of the day, it is my responsibility as an air show director to sign federal aviation paperwork that says I will put on a safe and efficient air show. That is my name. And because of that, I have to check certain boxes. And if the airport is unwilling to work with us through that process, then I have to move on without them.
Last question for you. Break down for me strategically, not strategically, schematically, where we're at now. Who has what? Who's waiting to sign what? There's an airport meeting later today. Walk me through that.
Want me to talk? Okay. Right now, I would say that both parties are kind of at a stalemate. You know, we have sent over an MOU that was stated, no, we're not accepting substantial changes to the agreement they gave us. And instead of giving back a redlined agreement, we gave a different MOU from Steve Tupper saying, okay, you know, here is where we can kind of meet in the middle. We did not have an agreement in 22 and 23 that I'm aware of. So that is something, this is a little bit newer with a lot more pieces to it and a lot of more components that we couldn't agree to, as both these gentlemen have already talked about. So I think right now it is back in the court of both parties to come back together and try to solve it and come meet in the middle. As Mr. Tupper said, we have all of the hope in the world that we can do that. We can put on a successful air show and we can be good neighbors and good community members together.
Will one of you be at the airport authority meeting?
Yes, sir, all of us.
All of us.
As you may have noticed from other intergovernmental and interorganizational disputes in this town, in many cases, and this may be more of a federal case than a local case, but in many cases, the judges impose mediation. A third party who comes between two organizations. And in this case, two organizations, as I've said, that offer a good, the air show, a good, the
Mhm.
airport, and so forth.
I agree.
And yet that there seems to be a tremendous amount of friction right now between the two. Maybe that's a good, safe word for it. Have you guys considered using a third-party mediator, whether it's binding or not? Have you considered mediation?
It's a great point, Peter, and thank you also for bringing up and highlighting the fact that it's a party of two goods. We'd like to agree with you on that front. And I think that you are right when you say that there is friction right now between the organizations because it's a curiosity of why are we at this impasse at this point. We have not had an agreement with the airport to use it. The second agreement they sent was titled "The Privilege and Right to Use the Airport." That's a public use federally funded airport. Like Steve mentioned, we don't need to have that. We already have those rights under federal protection. We're certainly open to a third party arbitrator or a third party mediator, if you will. We're more than willing to have any conversations that we need to at the airport to move forward amicably together. We just have felt so far up until this point that has not been a true reflection of the events as they've taken place. And it was just time to bring that spotlight to the reality of the situation, which I believe you have captured well, which is two good organizations that mean good and are currently in a position of friction. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I saw some of that agreement or heard something, but it comes down to high performance or high speed air shows. That's when they have to shut down for commercial air traffic. You've in the past had Blue Angels or Thunderbirds, maybe another military jet. So is it their position that they only want one act? Is that one of the limitations you're dealing with? Like saying you can only have one high performance act? Is that an issue? And would you be willing to shorten the show at all? Is that on the table?
Do you want or do you want me?
I'll take.
Go ahead.
Cool. The Blue Angels have the routine they have. It runs 52 minutes from step to touchdown. And one of the reasons they are so safe, and they got three different shows. They got a high show, mid show, and low show, depending on whether they've got the ceiling. But they fly the exact same thing every time. So the full, I'm going to use some acronyms, and I apologize. The TFR, the temporary flight restriction, that 5 nautical mile from a point about 1,500 feet north of Clinch Park, right? Okay. That has to be in place for the whole Blue Angels performance. But Christian has put together so you've got that circle, he's chopped the bottom out of it. The southern part, if you look at a map, runs roughly the northern tip of Boardman Lake. And that part, and that's about a mile north of the airport. That part is not covered by the TFR. Let's call it the limited TFR because I don't know what else to call it. But just that D shape is all that's necessary for instance, for this year, the A-10. A lot of people call it's the Thunderbolt 2. People call it the Warthog. We all know and love it. But the Air Force Aerial Events has told us that the A-10 will go ahead and fly in that space. In the meantime, the main runway for the airport that all the air carriers use, neither the approach paths nor the missed approach, if they have to go around, are at all affected by that. So the point being, the time during which there's the TFR, the big one that would own the airspace directly above the airport, for the performances Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's a 52-minute thing that has to fall within the hour. There's not a lot we can do, and that's why the Blue Angels are so safe. And then the other, they have the arrival circling, and I'll let Christian sort of cover that because he actually understands that better than I do.
Yeah. So on Thursday, and that's, to be clear, one of the big points of friction at the moment is the Thursday schedule. So the Blue Angels, when they arrive to town, their team is largely unfamiliar with our terrain, our geography. They're unfamiliar with hazardous obstructions like large cell phone towers. And because they are flying very fast, very low, they utilize a period on Thursday, which is called their circle and arrival maneuvers, where they fly for what is a total of 3.5 hours, but that is broken up. It's not flown in one, solid pack. They split that for them to even do some debriefing in between. that's when the Blue Angels will require their time to get intimate with our airspace and the geography that they will use to put on a safe and efficient air show for our community. So that point is incredibly important because, as I mentioned earlier, the Blue Angels and their team are creatures of habit. They're creatures of routine. They rely on those periods, those very important and intimate moments Thursday to get comfortable with our airspace and geography. So on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they can put on the show to dedicate and show the professionalism of the United States military. So that's an important piece of it as well. So as you add up Thursday, about 3.5 hours total of sterile airspace over the airport, and then 1 hour for 3 days. That's how I get to 6.5 hours of effect on the air carrier schedule. That's when we cannot use that limited TFR, the temporary flight restriction. We have to use the full thing. John Cudahy from the International Council of Air Shows, I believe, has something he'd like to add.
We've done a bit of delay, so it might be a second.
Yeah, sorry, we're dealing with a little bit of a delay here, so I apologize. You guys are muted on the Zoom call, but what I wanted to say, what I wanted to say is that when it comes to the disruption to the air carrier issue, a lot of the conversation is focused on Traverse City, and I think on this issue especially, it's important to step back and look at the whole country. These kinds of adjustments to air carrier schedules at much larger airports that have much busier airspace happen all the time. I mean, there's probably 40 or 50 of them around the country where these things take place as a matter of course. I believe the problem is being exaggerated by the airport authority. I don't know why, because we do this all the time. In fact, one of the people that the air show has on its team has done this that I know of at least 50 times, everywhere from JFK in New York to the smallest airports. That not everybody, but any show that's near a commercial airport has these kinds of requirements to adjust the air carrier schedule, and they do it routinely. It's for some reason it's being made to be a bigger deal here than I've ever seen it before. But we do this as an industry. We do this all the time.
Thank you, John.
I wanted to limit to 2 more questions.
I was just about to say that. Thanks, Eric. Well, I know this is, and I think it highlights the point that this is a very complicated matter, and it's education that's going to help solve this for everybody involved, including the community. So, time for 2 more questions. Go ahead, Art.
Well, I was just going to say, what resolution, if any, do you expect today? I mean, what's your case going in there, for lack of a better term?
We do not expect a resolution today. We will be at the airport board meeting to continue to reiterate that we are more than willing and happy to continue these discussions. It will probably take us far past today to get to those, but we are there just to continue offering that show of support. And we do have an individual from our organization that will be speaking to reiterate that message.
You alluded, I think in the beginning, I don't know if you said dishonesty or misleading or something about some of the things the NRAA has said, or people with them. Steve Plamondon, I think John Cudahy referred to as longtime air director or had your position for a long time.
Correct.
He's on the negotiating team. I've got to assume he's a fan of the air show and the Cherry Festival, as are a lot of people on that board. What's the reason that you can't see eye to eye with all that familiarity and common ground there? Why would he be opposed, making the argument against you?
I think that's a great question for you guys to bring to the airport authority. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate you joining us. Our team is going to head on over to the airport to join for the airport board meeting here. I would like to personally make the offer to any individual in the room that would like to learn more about this very complicated matter. My cell phone and Lindsay can help you get to that. I'm more than happy to answer questions so everybody can get a better understanding of these complicated matters. We are very grateful for your support as media in the community, and we look forward to seeing you in the airport and air show vicinity when we welcome the United States Navy Blue Angels and other air show performers in June. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to let you know that Joy and Mickey Dean are here.